Hello, 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 and welcome back to Dream It, Build It, Make It. I'm your host, Michael Heward, Manager of Content Marketing here at Iterable. And if you're new, welcome. Thanks so much for joining. A quick refresher for anyone that's seen before. Dream It, Build It, Make It is where we're talking to some of the people behind the best customer experiences out there, learning what they're doing, how they're changing, adapting, and just seeing what's going on in different niches of the world. Today, I'm very excited. We have Zarmina Niazie from Fivetran, she's a product marketing manager, and she's here to talk to us about data. Welcome, Zarmina.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Me too. It's going to be very exciting. First question, I always kind of forget to ask this to the guest. How are you doing? How are things going?
I'm good. It's a sunny day. I'm excited to talk to you. So I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I also have a sunny day, I think. I haven't been outside yet,
Nice.
to be honest, but I'm assuming it's sunny. And I think that's always a great thing. So to start us off, if you could just tell us a little bit about what you do and what Fivetran does.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a product marketer at Fivetran. And what Fivetran does is extract data from applications and databases so that you can centralize it in one place. And it's a process that's called a modern data stack. I specifically focus on marketing analytics. So trying to help teams create marketing insights so they can use data to build better relationships with customers.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's great. I think it's cool to see the connection between different data sources like that. But the first question is for you as a consumer. What is a good customer experience to you? What sort of things do you like to see from brands that you're interacting with?
I love this question. I am a big consumer, so I have a lot to say, but I think a solid customer experience to me starts with personalization. And I really think we're in this age where I just don't want to see anything irrelevant to me online. I live in a big city. I like bad reality TV. I like iced coffee. I don't want to be shown ads for like a golf club membership. It's just not relevant to who I am as a person. And I think customer experience starts even before you become a customer. So I think a brand that really lives up to this is Spotify. And it's a product where like no two users' accounts are ever going to look the same. And that personalization makes you feel really special when you're using their product. It's why I've been a user for years and years. And it really manages to capture like the social aspect of being unique too. I don't know if you do this, but every year when they release Spotify Wrapped, my Instagram feed is covered in people showing off how different they are. And basically Spotify Unwrapped is a year in review of what you've listened to. And I think that's just such a cool thing for a brand to be able to do authentically and say, hey, this is who you are and it's personalized to you and you should feel good about that.
Yeah, that's a great example. I love that. The unique to you is always very interesting to see at the end of the year. And sometimes at the end of the pandemic or at the end of 2020, mine was very different from a normal one, I think, or from what my normal might be. I think my taste changed.
Yes, it can be a little embarrassing.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is kind of the fun part, though.
Exactly. Yeah, I think everyone's music taste always has a little bit of embarrassment to it. Cool. Well, switching gears a bit, I want to get started talking about how Fivetran is connecting data. And so on your website, you talk a little bit about centralizing data and normalizing data. And I think that's an important distinction that some people need to understand. And so could you explain the distinction and what are the benefits to both?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So centralization is bringing all of the data from all the different sources into one single place. So bringing in all the data from your popular marketing tools like LinkedIn ads, Iterable, Google Analytics, and dropping all that data into one specific unified destination. Normalizing data is essentially restructuring the data to make it a little bit easier to work with. So it's actually a component of centralizing the data that basically makes it much faster for you to get insights. Normalizing the data we feel is really crucial to centralizing data, and that's one of the things that we do to make it easier to access your data.
It's basically organizing it. If it's unorganized, it can be hard to centralize it.
It can be really hard to do. Yeah. So we try and make sure that it's all in a tabular format. It's really easy to see on our website what the different fields and tables are and how they relate to one another.
Yeah. And so I imagine that if someone or if a company doesn't have properly normalized data, that's a a decent, I guess you could say mistake, but it makes it a little bit tougher. So what are some of the other difficulties you see when you're working with brands that are like organizing and accruing their data from different resources?
Yeah, there's a ton of different things, especially in the marketing analytics field and for marketing teams. They're faced with a lot of challenges when it comes to looking at data. So it's really tough to compare apples to apples across a lot of different platforms that you're using with the marketing platforms in general. So the way that Apple defines a click versus how Google does it versus how Facebook does it, it's all different methodologies. And if you're not well versed in that, it's really hard to go into each platform, say, okay, this is what my ROI looks like. This is what my customer acquisition cost looks like, and compare that across the board. As a brand and as a marketing team, it's going to be really hard to know if your email campaigns are working or if your SEO needs some work, if you really don't have access to the data across the board. If you can't accurately compare that type of data, how are you going to know how customers are finding you? How do you know what they think about you? It really spreads into the rest of your organization if you don't have strong marketing insights. I used to work in advertising at Google, and the number one consistent feedback was, how do I compare this across all my different marketing platforms? And it's just something that is really challenging for brands. And without that data centralization component, you're also kind of stuck in the past with like surface level metrics. So like ROI, for example, let's say you're an e-commerce brand and you want to figure out what the average ROI is that you're getting from Pinterest ads. You could find that number in a platform like Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, depending on what you're using. But if you want to create a very fully baked ROI, you could tie your Pinterest ads data to your Shopify data, and you can see actualized numbers that factor in things like the number of returns that product is getting, or the discounts that you're providing on certain product lines. It's like a process of turning up the dial on your marketing metrics. These things have existed for forever. ROI has existed for forever, but now we have the technologies to make it so that you can have the smartest ROI possible, the smartest calculations.
Interesting. And so is that something that you've seen brands struggle with? I mean, there's that famous stat out there that there's 7,000 marketing technologies out there. Is that something that I guess it depends on the use case, obviously, and like the business need. Yeah. But just finding that puzzle piece together, like is it something that I guess it would be hard to put it across industries, but is it something that you've seen that it's solvable, I guess, for like bigger brands, I guess you could say, because if they've got so many different platforms, it can be a little challenging to get started, at least.
Yeah, 100%. And it can be really challenging with the number of tools that you can use, and that number is just increasing, and people want to try new things. They want to try the next best thing. They really want to develop strong relationships with their customers, and they want to do that through all the different tools that are available. But if you don't know if the tools are working, then it's really hard to justify that spend and justify using them. So I think a challenge for bigger and bigger brands is they're using tons of tools, and a lot of them are essential and necessary. But when you're centralizing them, it can be costly to centralize every single data point that you have. And that's why with Fivetran, we use consumption-based pricing, which is you get pay for the data that you use. And it's a little bit more related to what you would actually do as a regular person. So that's one of the components of it that makes it really tough to centralize all of that data. But one that we're definitely consistently thinking about, like, what does this look like in the real world with marketing teams and finance teams and sales teams? What are they actually doing and needing with all the different data sources that they use?
It's almost like a quality over quantity type pricing.
Yeah, definitely. You want to be able to get all of the data you need from your marketing platforms or from NetSuite or Salesforce. You want to be able to dive deep in those tools that you're using every single day as a business.
And so you mentioned trying new things, and whether we liked it or not, the pandemic kind of forced us to try some new things, and it spurred a real digital transformation from brands across verticals. Like, I don't think anyone really was immune to it. for lack of a better term, I guess. So how does a brand prepare for such an influx of data? Like everyone was home, everyone was using these digital platforms. How does a brand even start to prepare for that? And like, at what point does a brand need to start looking to maybe like upgrade their tech stack?
Yeah, that's you have a great point. It was so volatile with data. And I think so many brands experience volatility because consumer behavior changed. What we wanted to do and what we wanted to consume was so different than it was before because our lives had really been impacted. So I think any brand who was able to sustain throughout, I mean, more power to them because that was a really tricky time. But one example that comes to mind is a customer of ours. It's a performance marketing agency called Sear Interactive. They called this out to us when we were chatting with them, and they had upgraded their tech stack right before COVID hit. And when it did, I think they were a lot more prepared than other agencies like them. They created kind of an executive point of view. They were able to identify consumer trends across the industries of their clients. They anticipated a lot of CPC bid changes, which was a big thing that was happening in the marketing industry at the time. And the reason they were able to do that is because they had incredibly accurate data and up-to-date data that they were able to access constantly. So they would refresh the data every 15 minutes so they could know, okay, today, what's it going to look like? And what's going to happen today? Because day by day, so many things were changing. And I think that's one of the best things to have is for a marketing team, things are always going to change and they're always going to change really quick. So being able to know what's happening at any given point very quickly is really essential. And I think help them through that time period. And I think what really led them to needing to do that upgrade or needing to change their data stack really came down to two big factors. And I think that's time and human error. So what they had done before was did a lot of manual downloading and merging spreadsheets so that they could uncover different insights, like how did these ads perform, or how did that social media post perform? And it's grabbing that from a bunch of different platforms and then merging it and downloading it with spreadsheets together. And that is incredibly time consuming. And I think that's something that people need to understand is it takes so much time out of someone's day. And it is also not very gratifying to be downloading and cleaning and merging data as an individual person, whether you're a marketer who's doing it or you're a marketing analyst who's doing it. It's just really tricky to be doing that all day. And then the other part of that is it opens up a lot of room for human error. And people are human. A decimal could go in a wrong place, but that could have really big implications for a business if you're reporting out on incorrect metrics. So I think that was one of the things that really gave them a sign to say, hey, we have the capability, we have all of the great data, and they had all the great people working for their company. It was really easy for them to identify the insights once they got past that manual point. So they just needed to streamline that. And I think that's really what woke them up to getting to that place.
That's interesting. You bring up like the right people. We actually talk about that internally at Iterable a lot for the digital transformation of you need the right people, you need the right processes, and you need the right technology. I think that's a great example of all three of those coming together to really adapt to that change. But speaking of people, so at a lot of orgs, the data integration and utilization it's a cross-functional endeavor. Like you mentioned, marketers, there's data scientists, sometimes even it's heard of like IT or the CIO. What are some of the ways you've seen teams kind of tackle this cross-functional challenge?
Yeah, it's definitely a huge cross-department effort. If you're working on marketing analytics, then your marketing team needs to be involved. But if you're also working on financial analytics, sales analytics, which every company pretty much is, then they would need to be involved too. And what we really see is when this is implemented well, it often changes a company culture and makes it more data-driven. So maybe organizations that weren't necessarily thinking about data and how it impacts their day-to-day, they've started to think about it a lot more because again, they've got that quick access to data much more easily. For Fivetran, I think one of the great things is that you don't need to be a data engineer or a data scientist or a CIO to start wanting to integrate your data. You just need to be a person who wants to access your data. So that's one big thing, but more often than not, it does start with technical stakeholders, and they're great at owning the process and implementation. They're great at that portion and just crush it on the more technical side of things. And the way that a marketing team could get involved is just they are the subject matter experts, right? They know what the data sources they are that they need. They need to be vocal about what data they want to see from the tools. Do you want to see everything under the sun, or do you only need certain data points to be able to accurately report out on your metrics? So they help out by being the subject matter experts, and the technical stakeholders can do the much more technical implication portion. And that's how everybody works together to try and up-level an entire organization.
Yeah, I mean, as a very non-technical person, I have incredible respect for those our teammates that are like that. And you're talking about there earlier. I'm sure for a lot of people, like if they're going through this data and they don't have the right tool in place, their eyes can glaze over and they just want help from other teammates as well. So it's definitely,
I'm also not a technical person and didn't start here as a technical person. And I've really just been in digital marketing for my entire career, but being able to tie that to the data, which I think is a component that a lot of teams aspire to, but sometimes don't get to because it's hard to do that cross-functional work. Being able to see that it is easy and that it is kind of simple, I'm like, oh, wow, I've really seen the light. I don't need to be technical to get it. I just want to be able to do my job in an easy way, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I think everyone can help for that.
Yeah.
That way we can work to live, not live to work. So speaking of not being a technical person, I am on the content team. So when I prepare for these interviews, I like to look at the different content pieces that companies are putting out. Fivetran has an excellent ebook. Everyone go check it out. It's called The CMO's Guide to Automating Your Marketing Analytics. And I love one quote in there it says, mitigating the rising cost of centralizing growing sources of data. The whole idea of mitigating costs, like I think there's a Frank, and you can expand on this, but there's a misconception that data integration is a costly endeavor. So can you walk through the different ways that business can balances the need for tools with consolidating data, and also just how data integration can save you money?
Yeah, definitely. And you're right, that is a tricky balance. And you said it yourself, there's like 7,000 marketing platforms on the market right now that people could use. And again, people want to try the tools, people want to see what works. But in order to see what works, you have to take the data beyond the surface level and beyond just looking at it in a report once a month. And what good data centralization should do is give you these kind of big aha moments. So it should say, wow, that A/B test really worked. Wow, customers really responded to this post. Oh, this is a segment of customers that we really haven't thought about before. And that's what data and insights should give you. And being able to uncover these well and quickly, it ends up leading to better efficiencies so that you don't have to keep searching and adopting new tools. You can stick with what works because you're confident that it does work. I think every marketing team is really tasked with trying to decrease their costs of customer acquisition and increase their customer acquisition, which is always hard to do, but always something that they're striving to. And if you can find those aha moments within your data and within your insights, you're going to be able to do those efficiencies better. And those efficiencies are going to end up saving you money in the long run.
Yeah, it's definitely an investment. And I think something that a lot of people forget is that you just got to do the research beforehand. If you don't do the research beforehand, you might end up having to redo it over and over again. Then it gets costly.
That's when the money gets in there. Yeah.
But speaking of investing in the future, I like to close out these talks with a question that goes back to you as a consumer. Where are the opportunities for marketers and brands moving forward to make the customer experience better? Like, how can this brand customer relationship be improved on how we're seeing it today?
Yeah, I love this question. And it's something that we think about all the time. And I really think that customer behavior in general is shifting towards valuing authenticity, which I kind of mentioned a little bit. But consumers are so much better and so much smarter than they ever have been before. And they're also not afraid to share how they feel, whether it's like social media or word of mouth. So I think brands that underestimate their consumers are going to be able to recognize that in the future, it's just not going to go the direction they want it to go. I don't need, as a consumer, I don't need Spirit Airlines to tell me I'm going to have a 5-star luxury experience on their flight. I want them to tell me I'm going to get a great deal to get from point A to point B. And I want them to lean into what their value actually is in a way that's, authentic and transparent. And I think that customers are just getting smarter and smarter. And if brands want their brands to be sustainable, they're going to acknowledge that and know and treat their customers like the intelligent people that they are.
Yeah, I like that. I really love that answer. It's not about marketing to the lowest common denominator. Like, you have quality customers that know sometimes more than you. So you should dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, as a society, we're a lot more digitally literate than we ever have been. So if I wanted to know who's making the shorts that I'm wearing tomorrow, I could figure that out really quickly and really easily. And I could see what that process and that manufacturing looks like. And that's not something that I would have been easily able to do ever before. So I think consumers in general, they've got so much information at their fingertips, and it's making them smarter. And it's also making it so that they're loud about it. They'll complain about you on TikTok, or they'll blast you on Twitter if you're doing something that they don't like, or if there's something happening that they don't appreciate. And I think that's a really cool thing that's happening, but it's also hard for marketers and for brands to navigate, which is why I think they should own up to and lean into what their value is, and not try to get anywhere that they don't need to be.
Yeah, no, I think that's great and beautifully put. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I learned a ton today in just our 20 something minutes of talking. That was fantastic. If our viewers have any questions for you, how can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. It's Zarmina Niazie. There's not too many of us out there. And you can check out Fivetran at fivetran.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks. I love this chat.
Awesome. Well, to the rest of you, make sure you go check out the other episodes. Make sure you find Zarmina if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.